Hi, thanks for joining us today. We're going to make a healing vegetable miso soup. It's very easy to make. This is something that is good to have either first thing in the morning for breakfast because it creates a very alkaline environment in your body. It helps you to digest your food. It basically balances all of the electrolytes and probiotics in your body. So it's an excellent thing to start the day off with. It's also stimulating to the appetite, so it's good to have before a meal to start off lunch or dinner. So this is something that you can vary anytime you make it. Use different vegetables in it, and make it a little bit different depending on what you have on hand. To make a healing miso soup, you just need 5 components. Water. You can go ahead and get that started on your stove if you're cooking along with me. For each serving, you need about 1 to 2 cups of water. So depending on how many people are going to be eating it, and if you want it for 1 or 2 meals, you can decide. I have about 3 cups of water in mind for 2 people. And then you're going to need some sort of, you're going to need some sea vegetables. And I typically use wakame. If you don't have any wakame on hand, you can, I'll put it this way. If you don't have wakame on hand, you can also use kombu, or you could use a combination of the two. But this is the classic sea vegetable that you'll put into miso soup. And then you'll need some kind of regular vegetable rather than sea vegetable, or a combination. So I'm going to use kabocha squash, shiitake mushrooms, and some kale. And we'll get started on slicing those in just a moment. And then you'll need some miso. I'm using some chickpea miso from Miso Master. It's an organic, traditionally made miso made with sea salt and the fermenting agent, which is a inoculated rice grains. On the blog post I have for this recipe, I have a whole section on how miso is made and videos from the South River Miso Company. So definitely check that out if you're interested in the tradition of miso making. It's really interesting, fascinating. And miso can be made out of different things. This one's made out of chickpeas. Most of the time it's made out of soybeans, or a mixture of soybeans and other beans. Okay. Then finally, you need a garnish. So I'm going to use some sliced green onions today. Why don't we just slice those up right away? You could also use some grated daikon radish. Really love that, especially if you have a cold or you're having nasal congestion, anything like that. I think I need all those. Then it's good to put the grated daikon or a lot of scallions, because those can break up that congestion. It really does help to have the hot soup and then the pungent garnish. So you could put just a few little onions as a garnish, or put a nice big handful in if you're having congestion. And again, the grated daikon works well too. So let's start. Put your water on to boil if you're gonna cook with me, first of all. You could also use vegetables like celery, carrots, another kind of squash. Something that you enjoy. I think that the kabocha squash is really flavorful. It's very sweet and just has a really, really nice flavor. I still remember the day that I first learned about kabocha squash. It was when I was taking a weekend seminar at the old Natural Epicurean School, and I had a creamy kabocha squash soup, blended up soup, and changed my life. I decided kind of on that day that I was gonna take this 2.5 year culinary program to learn how to be a macrobiotic chef, natural foods chef, and so kabocha squash can be very, what would you call it? Influential, enticing. So try it if you haven't tried this before. It looks like a green pumpkin and it's bright orange inside. Usually I start out with rehydrating the sea vegetable, but this squash is going to take a little bit longer to cook. So I'm going to put that in first. My water was boiling just a minute ago. So you want to usually wait till the water's boiling. I think mine's very close to boiling. You can see the bubbles. I've already cut up my kale because I was taking it off the stem. And I just kind of tore it into little pieces. So now I'm going to slice some mushrooms. I may not need this many, but I gave these a quick rinse so they wouldn't get mushy, and then I wiped them off with a towel. And I oftentimes will use these stems in vegetable stock later, so I'm going to save those. So shiitake mushrooms have a lot of healing properties. They can actually help to get rid of excess sodium in the body. If you have a diet that's high in animal foods and sodium, like maybe barbecue, bacon, things like that, eating shiitake mushrooms is supposed to be really good for balancing that out. And they just are very, very flavorful and have a lot of the umami taste that makes things taste delicious. So they're more expensive than the button mushrooms, but you can maybe just use fewer of them and enjoy them. They are also firmer in texture than button mushrooms or cremini mushrooms, and so that's probably all I need. So that firmer texture is nice in the soup. And they have kind of almost like a meaty texture to them. Okay, so the squash has been in there for about a minute. I could probably add the mushrooms now. There are different kinds of wakame. Some are like this, that are basically the pieces of wakame that are pulled off of the stem or the stalk. So they rehydrate very, very quickly. You'll see when I put them in the pot, it's pretty magical when you put them in. It's almost like those little sea monkeys that used to get when we were kids, that they're like little dried krill, little dried shrimp, and you put them in water and they expand to maybe 10 or 20 times their dried size. Maybe they even come back to life. I don't remember, but you'll see what's going to happen with these. I'll keep one out so that you can see how much it expands. And I might put a little extra. But if you use the whole wakame, that is really delicious too. What I do with that is I put it in the water as it's coming to a boil, and then I remove it with a skimmer and I slice it into little pieces, because you can't really eat that stalk without cutting it up and cooking it a little bit longer. So now you can see the wakame in there. And I'm just gonna give it a little stir. My flame went out, hold on. So I'm making this soup really hearty because it's a cold, damp day. If it was a summertime, I would probably just put maybe some celery and daikon and maybe a little baby bok choy and make it lighter and more cleansing. This is heartier and more building, and I think it's more appropriate for the cold weather. Another thing I could have done first is I could have sauteed the squash and the mushrooms first. and that would make it heartier and more appropriate for the fall, but this is also going to work. So I'm going to take a little bit of my soup liquid and put it in a bowl or a measuring cup like this. Gosh. So now you can see, I'm just going to take one of these out, the difference between the wakame when it's rehydrated and when it's dry. So you don't want to put too much in. I may have put too much in. I don't know. You have to love it as much as I do, I guess, to put that much in. And so what I'm doing is I'm dissolving the miso. You want to put about a maybe heaping teaspoon for every cup of water that you have. And of course, it's up to your taste how salty you want it to be. You just don't want it to be so salty that you're going to have to gulp down a bunch of water after you have your soup. You just want it to be nicely flavored. And I just remembered I've got these greens to put in too. So you're going to put the miso in towards the end of cooking, which is about now. This is very fast. And I'm also going to add in some of the greens. I probably don't need all of these. We don't want the vegetables or the wakame to get overcooked. And so that's why I'm putting the greens in at the end. And the miso, you're just going to let that gently simmer. Doesn't need to come to a rapid boil anymore. I'll just put that last piece of wakame in. Why not? And then just to make sure, I think I'm going to taste the broth to make sure it's got the right amount of seasoning. Oh, I made that a lot saltier than I usually do. I think I was just very enthusiastic about the miso today, so I did make it a little bit too salty.
Everybody's got different tastes.
Right. That's better. I could probably use a tiny bit more water, but it's really delicious. So one of the take-home points for today is that by making soup, with care and with love, you are going to be creating something that's deeply nourishing for your body. It's going to go right to the center of your body where you need that deep nourishment, and it'll feel very satisfying. You're going to be able to absorb these minerals. I'm going to turn the heat off now. In a way that you can't absorb minerals from eating a bag of chips. There's salt in there, but it's not dissolved in a broth. And we've got very good quality miso made with sea salt that's seasoning this. So anyway, when you get that deep nourishment, it helps to create a better balance in your body. You want your body to be slightly alkaline. This supports internal alkalinity. You also want to eat things that are warm because your digestion is dependent on your digestive enzymes are dependent on your food being warm rather than ice cold. So I hope that you'll try this out. I'm going to ladle some into a bowl here. You can put this in any kind of bowl, but we thought it would be fun to put it in these little soup bowls today. Little miso soup bowls. Probably going to end up eating 2 bowls this rate. Do you want to try it, Nelson, or are you going to wait?
I'll wait.
Okay. Gonna garnish it with a little bit of.
Come over and try. Hold on.
You could turn that around so you can see it.
I'll just.
So I'm looking forward to having this kind of a pre-lunch meal. Here's yours, Nelson.
Hi, everybody. I'm too tall.
Oh gosh, you can sit on that bench.
Okay.
So be careful, it's really hot. Cheers.
Clink.
So this is probably about the saltiness that Nelson likes. It's too salty for me, but
I like salty miso soup. I lived in Japan for 3 years, so this makes me very happy.
so try to find this chickpea miso. I think it's so wonderful. And then if you're making this for anyone that is sensitive to soy, you don't have to worry about it because it's soy free, gluten free. I think this at either Wheatsville or Whole Foods. You could probably order it online also. And I've got information about different types of miso on the recipe that we're going to post for this. So enjoy making your miso soup. I hope you make it often this fall and winter, and let me know how it goes.